So glad y'all can make it today for the chat and learn. My name is Hunter. I'm your host today. I'm with Power to Fly, and we have a great hour ahead of us. We'll be talking to Fatem Saremi from Autodesk, and we'll jump into her introduction in just a moment. But first, if this is your first chat learn here with us at Power to Fly, welcome, welcome. And if you're coming back, so good to see you again. Welcome back. So a little bit of housekeeping here. Please turn on your cameras. It's a great way for you to get some face contact with Fatem here and stay in connection, and you can ask your questions. And there's some other folks from the Autodesk team as well hanging out. So please feel free to jump in and participate. Excuse me. And you can ask questions in the chat. So any questions or comments, feel free to drop those in the chat as it's going along, and we will look at those questions as we're going along. And if you have any comments, feel free to drop them in the chat as well. But please do keep in mind that this is a safe space. So please be respectful to yourselves and to each other so that we can all have a great hour. And know that if you do bring yourself on camera, you may show up in this recording. And we will be sending you a link of this recording within the next couple of days. So you can rewatch it, share it with your friends, tag us on all the things. So you can see we are on all the things at Power to Fly, and you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. And when you're asking questions, you can do it publicly in the chat as we talked about, or if you want to direct message me, if you want to ask something anonymously, you can do that by going over the chat section, select my name, Hunter, and then you can DM me and I can ask that question on your behalf. Or if anything comes up, you can message me that way and we can take care of whatever's going on. So that's the housekeeping. So we're going to be chatting with folks from Autodesk today. So super excited for that. And here you can see the landing page of the Power to Fly website, where you can see some really awesome resources from Autodesk, as well as job listings and other videos that are available. And so today we have Fatem Saremi. Fatem builds AI products for Autodesk as a data science software developer. She joined Autodesk after completing her Bachelor of Computer Science from California State University, East Bay, 2021. Woot woot. Passionate about helping others find their space in the tech industry, Fatem loves creating original content via her YouTube and Instagram channels to empower computer science students. So hopefully she will be dropping those links for us to share to check out her stuff going on there. But in the meantime, Fatem, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. How are you today?
Hi, I'm doing great. Hello to everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Awesome. And so the way this next hour is going to work, friends, is we have an hour. And if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. And in the meantime, you all submitted questions in advance, which is so awesome. So many people wrote questions in advance. And so we curated those questions, and we're going to go down that list. And so that's what we're going to be doing. And meanwhile, you can be participating and drop in your questions as they come up, so we can kind of do both and bounce back and forth. Okay, so this topic, we're going to be tips for navigating your first tech interview. So maybe you are just starting out, maybe you're fresh out of school, maybe you're still in school, or maybe you're 10, 20 years into your career and you're doing a pivot. So there's lots of different possibilities for where you could be right now, and all of that is welcome. You can bring your whole self to the table here. So the first question we had, Fatem, that is on our list is, how are technical interviews usually structured? And if you could kind of maybe tell us a little bit, like, what is a technical interview? If you could give us a definition there too.
Yeah, of course. So my background from school is that I did computer science, and for those of us who major in that, we're very familiar with terms like technical interviews. So that's an interview where your technical skills, like your coding skills or your engineering skills, is tested. And the way they do that is really trying to see how you think and how you problem solve, because at the end of the day, as a software engineer, your job is to provide value via the solutions you provide. So The structure could vary company to company, country by country, but overall, the idea is for people to first of all send you a it's called an online assessment. That's like a link to a website like HackerRank that is a timed limit exercise for you to solve like a couple of coding questions.
Mm,
So after that, you move on to behavioral interviews. That's where your behavior and your soft skills are tested by the company you're interviewing with. And then following that, there could be, depending on also the level of the job you're applying to, we're keep it to like beginner, like just fresh out of school type of like tech interviews. You might have 2 to 3 different technical interviews where you could be live coding. That's could be on a Zoom call. Someone's watching you code, someone watching you like problem solve. And the goal there is to just like see how, if once you do join the team, how much value we'll be able to provide with the skills you have, but also how much of a good communicator you are, because we can't just like have a code base that's really huge and we're the owner of it. So that's usually the structure, where it starts off with an online assessment, then a behavioral interview that's with the hiring manager or a recruiter, followed by a couple of rounds of technical interviews. And companies like Amazon, they really drag this process out because they really want to test their candidates, I guess.
Interesting. Thank you for that. So another question we have here are, can you talk about some of your go-to strategies for preparing for the technical portion of the interview? So I imagine different companies might want to see different skills, but are there some things that maybe are sort of universal with some of these things?
Yes, absolutely. So, first thing that is like my go-to strategy is to do mock interviews. And this is a process where I ask someone like my friend to get on a Zoom call with me. And I just try to explain something to them or try to like practice a very basic question, which is maybe like, I don't know, find the sum of all the numbers in this array. That's very doable. But being able to talk through, okay, I understand the problem, this is my approach, here's where I will start, like being able to like get that like audio going, like where you are like thinking out loud, that's really important. So mock interviews are definitely my go-to strategy. And then for just brushing up my skills, I really like watching YouTube videos of other people solving like similar like lead code questions, which is just all of these like a couple of sentences, questions that are kind of like perform this coding task this way, but they're not like always clear about what the this way is. That's where the question comes from. That's where you like add the value and stuff. So I like watching other people on YouTube like do that, because at that point, while like when I'm interviewing, I've already done all the hard work of studying and learning. Now it's just about like reminding myself this is the strategy I should use to solve that problem. And it's like a good way of like keeping information fresh. Um, I know a lot of other people would say like I would prefer like I don't know like uh practicing 2 hours per day, but I'm kind of like this advice is like beyond the 2 hours per day practicing. It's just like uh getting myself ready for the interview.
I
So
love
those are
that.
my two of those. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Makes me think of my dad's a musician. So growing up, he was always like doing the scales in the other room. Like, he still does it. He's 75 years old. He's still doing scales every single day so that he can perform to his best ability, right?
Yeah, those are the fundamentals. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and just to draw folks' attention to the chat there, Autodesk is hiring. So if you click on that link there, that'll take you to that where you saw that screenshot earlier of the landing page. It'll take you to the job section of all of the jobs listed through the Power to Fly website for Autodesk. And if you do apply through our website, Autodesk gets that notification so they can see that you were part of this talk today, and maybe you'll stand out in the crowd. So pro tips. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. this time is for you. These questions that I'm doing right now were pre-submitted by a bunch of y'all. So if anything comes up, any level, we are here to ask them. Okay, so another question we had pre-submitted was, how can we assess if the company culture is right for us? And what type of questions can we ask to gain deeper insight about their culture?
Yeah, that's a great question because it really it's like based on the fact that we all agree interviews are a time for you to also ask the questions and evaluate whether this company, whether this work environment is going to be the right place for you, like aligning with your work style and your career goals. So, um, how can we assess if a company is right for us? It's really in the small details, like I've had interviews with companies, not Autodesk, but other companies that are very much, in their communication, like they're emailing to you and like following up on interviews or scheduling interviews. Their communication is really not consistent. And, like they leave you out hanging for like a week. So in that time, you should, as a person, you should be thinking about like, okay, what does this tell me about the company? They're probably like not the best with respecting people's time. Like, and I totally understand that when we're interviewing, our goal is to like get to that income as soon as possible. But then, you want to have the foresight of like what costs are they going to pay me, and like one of the things is just like the small details during the interview time, like how respectful of your time are they, how well do they follow up, how well do they communicate. And during interviews, some good questions that you can ask to kind of get an idea of like, how much does this company care for me as an individual and my career growth, is like asking people in your company during the pandemic and the lockdown and COVID, all that type of stuff, what sorts of assistance or programs did the company provide for you? And that's where people will either say they didn't really do much, or others will kind of like Autodesk will be able to tell you that we actually got a lot of like assistance from Autodesk. We got like so many like additional scheduled holidays. We got like mental health days. We have Fridays. Half of Fridays are all entirely blocked off because the company recognizes that that's the day where you're like winding down from the week, and you want to like you don't want to be in meetings that add on to your workload. You just want to like wrap up your work. um, Another question that you can ask, is if you are a person who cares about like how represented you are in a company, like let's say like what percentage of their C-suite are women, or whatever ethnicity that you're looking for. You can ask the question of like, what are like the employee sort of like social or like ethnical groups, like that are kind of maybe like the committees for um like specific events that you're looking for. Like for example, I would be looking for like anything that has to do with young professionals. Like, is there a committee, is there a group of people that are like, I don't know, putting on events or like putting a lot of effort towards like supporting the young professionals of a company? And that could be that the answer of the person could be like, yeah, we have this one organization and they host events like talks, like, and then you take that answer and you say like, is that something that aligns with you? At Autodesk, we have so many like groups. We have one for Latinx community, we have one for young professionals, we have women and non-binary folk. So at Autodesk, there's a lot of like things that you can, a lot of immediate groups that you can access, and you will feel at home and welcome. And then if you care about like, let's say you care about work-life balance because you will be taking a lot of trips in the next year, you could be asking the person, hey, so like, what are the vacation or, paid time off, or like, what is it? And I'm blanking on the exact question, but like you basically want to ask them like, in your experience, what has it been like for you to take some time off? And then the person will either give you an answer that'll make you go like, that doesn't really sound like genuine, or they'll give you an answer that tells you, okay, that's good. So this is like mainly the questions I would say is like, just put yourself in the shoes of you in the future who's like working at this company, and then try to think about like, how hard will it be for me to have like to do things on my own and not get like bogged down with like all the work or, all the restrictions that this company is gonna like put on me. And can you remind me what's the second part of that question, please?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
The full question was, how can we assess if the company's culture is right for us, and what types of questions to gain deeper insight about their culture?
Oh, I see. Yes, yes. So I think I fully answered that question, and it is. I'm don't have like a list of questions because the culture it's like very personal. Like it's like what you are looking for.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I love that. And I loved hearing too about the different groups that you mentioned that are available at Autodesk for this sort of culture. Are there other things about the company culture at Autodesk that you personally enjoy and that you utilize and keeps you, keep your cup filled?
Oh yes, absolutely. We have in terms of like talking about like time off and everything, Autodesk provides sabbaticals for people who have been at Autodesk for 4 to 5 years, I think. Um and it's basically like it's like a great vacation that you can take to truly unplug. And on our social channels in the company, we always get like news of like where people have traveled on their sabbatical, and it's always like a great adventure. Like someone recently went to through like a backpacking through Europe, and it's just like so cool to be able to see the person that like is like very like you're always in meetings with them, you always have like a professional relationship with them, but you get to see their photos of their time away and how they enjoyed their time. So it kind of like brings you closer to the person, not just as like a colleague, but someone that's a person that's like like even though we're remote and not a lot of like opportunities to go in office maybe, but that's still like a way that you can look forward to your sabbatical and be like, that is truly the time where Autodesk wants me to unplug, to go away, and then they want me to come back with all the cool pictures and all the like good stories that I found, that I experienced. So yeah,
Uh,
that's another thing.
That's great. And what were you mentioned some of the things that were helpful that during the pandemic and lockdown, you're like, oh, posing that question. Can you share some of the things that Autodesk provided for? So maybe it could help give some people some context when they're like, oh, that's a good one. Oh, that, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So during the lockdown, I joined Autodesk in the previous year, so it's more like the aftermath of lockdown, and it's all
Mm,
of the things that I mentioned. It's the fact that on Fridays we have half of the day blocked off, so that's the time for no meetings. That's for deep focus times. That's one thing they've done, and also all the additional mental health and additional holidays that they've added in, so that people can feel like they can just unplug and go away, like just get away from work. Another thing that I really like that Autodesk had done, it's always that our CEO Andrew, he he has like very great communications to the entire company. As soon as the Ukraine issue you know happened, we got an email that says like, here's how it will affect us, and here's how it will affect our business, and here's what I want like our company to do with it. I thought that was very thoughtful of him to do that, because the question did arise of like, how is this going to affect our company, and we were immediately kept into the loop.
a good, clear communication between
Hmm.
the whole company. I love that. I also love something I want to highlight. You said earlier about the job interview process. You said, put yourself in the shoes of the future you, which I love that. That's such a great way of thinking about it, because I feel like it can help kind of like check your own level of like priorities and needs, and also like, I don't know, it kind of takes the pressure off of the job interview in a way. I love that. Like, just assume you get it, right? Like, assume
Or
success.
yeah, assume you get it, and also think about like, what if I get it and I didn't pay attention to the right signs, then that would
Right.
be really bad.
Yeah.
um yeah.
Yeah, great. So we're getting some great questions that are starting to come in the chat. And we're talking about the interview process right now, and I actually got a direct one as well. And so someone asked, I would love to hear about advice on how to best answer the salary range question. So sometimes there'll be job postings and it can like, be like, it's between this amount and this amount. And how do we gauge that when we're in the interview process, would you say?
Yeah, that's a very confusing thing that happens during interviews, I would say, and like fully would admit to. So I recently had one of my friends who is also like in the software engineering kind of like role. She was interviewing, but she was really scared to actually give a range, a salary range, because the idea is like, what if I give a range that's too high and they're going to dismiss me as a candidate? And this is one of those situations where you have to just take a number and go with it and just like see what happens. So right now there's a lot of like good resources on Google. You won't in terms of like finding a range for a salary um, based off of your location and the years of experience you had. The number is not like exact, of course, and it is totally valid to be afraid, that to like be conscious of the fact that if I say a range that's too large, this might dismiss me as a candidate. But I think even though we're in the process of interviewing and we're really eager to land a job and we really, really want to have an experience and have income as soon as possible, I think like there is like a factor of not knowing, and there's ways that you can throw the question back to the recruiter and do
Mhm.
this ping pong as many times as you can until you go like, okay, you know what, my range is 130 to 150, but what do you think about it? I would be interested to know what your like budget for this position is, and that going back and forth with the recruiter where you just kind of like delay the answer, that's kind of like a conversational skill, like kind of like a soft skill that you need to have. And there is, luckily on YouTube, there is a lot of like content about like how do you answer that question and how do you like kind of go around it if you don't feel comfortable answering it. But at the end, I think you should just have a number and go with it, because at the end of the day, you don't know if they're going to dismiss you off of this. And if they are going to dismiss you off of this, then you've tried your best to you should feel you should um answer and carry yourself in a way that you're at least like comfortable, and you're rest assured that okay, I tried to gauge their budget before I gave my answer, so I don't feel guilty and or I don't feel like kind of like stressed out. And in case they do dismiss me because of the salary range was too high, then I don't think that would be a huge loss. Even though when we're interviewing, we're in a place where we really want to get it. We really want to get as many offers as we want. Like a couple of rejections because of your salary wouldn't hurt. It's like okay.
That's really good advice. And it makes me think of what we were just talking about a second ago of putting yourself in the shoes of your future you. It's like, well,
Hmm.
would you really want to take the job if you went below the number that you wanted to get? Or would you be unhappy in a year if you were, drastically under?
Yeah, and like I definitely have had friends who jumped on the first opportunity they got because they had gone through so many rejections, and they got the first acceptance and got an offer extended to them, and they were like yes. But then like within 6 months, like there's just like this dread just washing over them, where they're like, I should have just evaluated things a little bit more. Now I need to jump to another company within a year, otherwise I really will not like this job, or myself for being in this job.
Yeah. We had a question from Victor asking to circle back around the company culture. Are you approaching other employees or cold through LinkedIn? Any tips to do this? Or are you mostly assessing this by asking the interviewers or recruiters?
So asking the interviewers and recruiters is a great idea, but also using websites like Indeed, where people like leave a review of their company, that's a great idea as well. And LinkedIn is a great call out, because you can go on LinkedIn and find like all the employees of a company, and you can send like a message to them. I haven't done that for a job opportunity. I have done that for like going to like schools, because I wanted to ask around like, hey, you're an alumni of such and such, what was your experience like? And I think like out of 10 people, like a good solid 5 to 7 people write back on LinkedIn, and that's great. but you do have to draft up some sort of like a template where you send them a message and say, hey, I'm interested in this position, would love to get your thoughts on this and this. And another actually good way that you can connect with people in terms of like company culture is if you go to tech events. And there are tech events all around America and in other countries as well. That's where like a group of professionals get together and they just like network, enjoy some talks, get some food, or learn about technology. Over there, you can meet people in person and you can like, while you're getting to know like what their job is, you can ask them like, hey, how do you like working for Apple? And tech events are a great way to like have that in-person connection and get like insights about a company like in person, face to face from like employees.
Great tips. Love this. Thank you. So we're getting a bunch of questions are coming in. We're about to approach the half-hour mark. So please do keep those questions coming. We're trying to get to as many of them as we can. And one question we had pre-submitted as well was, can you maybe share with us some do's and don'ts in technical interviews?
Yes. So for technical interviews, again, you might be in a situation where the person just wants to see how you think. They're not looking for a solution. They're not looking for the right answer. They just want to see what is the approach that you would take, and also how do you communicate what you're doing. Because when you're joining a company, it's not like you are like a team. It's you joining a team. So they want to know how well you connect with them. So do's of technical interviews is always say, hey, I'm going to take this route. What do you think about that? Another do is you want to ask them, are you interested in like just like getting the correct solution out of like getting the correct answer, or are you more like trying to gauge what I'm thinking? Because that's a good question to ask, since people because I did say that the goal is for them to see how you think, but then it's also a good idea to clarify, like, do you just want to see like the one number and that's it? So that's another one. And then the don't of technical interviewing is, in case you have access to a compiler or something that runs your code, don't ignore that button. Like, continuously run your program, continuously look to see what are the outputs, check for any errors, because that'll show the interviewer that you're not just like a person that will write like hundreds of lines of code and then just put it to production and then it will break everything. And then another don't for technical interviews is that for all the people who are like a little bit more familiar, don't start with the most optimal solution first. Start with like the easiest, greedy approach first. And even if it's not you writing the code, even if it's like in your mind and you speaking it to the person to say that like, hey, my first approach would be to do this. Should I code that? Or are you interested in something that's more space efficient or time efficient? So those are my good, like, 4 do's and don'ts.
I love that. Celine made a comment, brute force, then optimize.
Yes. Yes. Thank you.
I love that. Okay, so you were just talking about some do's and don'ts, and AC asks any tips you could provide in terms, and we touched on this a little bit, of preparing for code testing before having an interview with Autodesk, and maybe also some tips you could share for other companies as well. So we talked about, kind of like the piano scales, you're going beyond the 2 hours a day and you're doing these other videos and you're watching that. Is there any other preparation for code testing that you could recommend?
Yes, absolutely. I think beyond the advice that I already gave you for doing well in code testing or like just like technical assessment, really get in touch with people who have done the interview before and ask them what kind of questions are they asking. Or if not that, then you can use like websites like Indeed to get an idea, like an insight of what kind of technical questions are they going to ask. Since if we're talking about like lead code questions, there's 3 tiers. There's like the easy, medium, and hard. You want to know, like, in terms of like effort and like me preparing for this interview, where does this company land? Like I remember when I was interviewing with Capital One, I was able to join a Facebook group that was like for women in engineering. And very similar to Power to Fly. It was a community where people can come together and interact and connect. And I just was able to ask people like, hey, like if you've interviewed for this company, Capital One, what kind of questions did they ask you? So when it comes to like preparing, you can save yourself some time or effort and, really get an idea of like what they're going to ask. But that's going on top of the two previous advices I give. Um, yeah.
Great. Awesome. So we're right at the half-hour mark now, friends. So keep those questions coming. So we have the next 30 minutes to chat and learn. We also have, oh, great. This is a great question that just popped in from Victor. What are some YouTubers you'd recommend to prepare for coding interviews? And also, we can also check out your YouTube channel.
Oh, yes, of course. I do have a YouTube channel myself. I talk about more like the broader computer science field. So it's not just about interviewing and careers. It is more about like computer science stuff. But I will have to kind of go through YouTube to give you those links. No names pop at the top of my mind right now. But if you connect with me on LinkedIn, I'll be sure to make a post with all of the really good people that I was able to follow, since a lot of this stuff is, when you are following along someone and following along with someone's video about like how to answer a question, a lot of it is like your own preference and how you understand, because like the way they might be speaking or the way they might be explaining things just doesn't make sense to you. So there is a lot of like people out there who are making such content, and like maybe the things that I find helpful might not be helpful to you, but I'll definitely make a post on LinkedIn with a compilation of my favorite YouTubers.
I love that. Thank you so much. And be sure to follow her on LinkedIn and connect there. What great resources. And Victor says, thank you for that. Sounds great. Okay. Katrina from the group chat here asked, what are some of the general computer science topics that would be good to know if you don't have a traditional background in this?
Yeah, so the first thing for technical interviews and interviewing with tech companies, it's data structures and algorithms topics. So that's like how we organize and store data in computers on like an abstract level. So that's a really good thing to know. Another thing that I didn't actually start to really take seriously until my job at Autodesk, it was system designs questions. So apparently this is a whole topic that people ask in like it's a whole category of questions that people ask in technical interviews, and it has to do with system design. And that's pretty simple. Like let's say you have like a website that has like a database, a front and a back. How do you architect these so that they're like speaking and exchanging information in the most optimal way? Or like let's say you have a mobile app and you want to add a new feature into it, and this feature will need a lot of like new things to come into the system. How do you plug them in? So that's another thing that you can that you should like really look into. It is kind of fundamental, not in a way to at least to computer science students. Like at least we've had like 2-3 classes that will help us like answer these questions. But on YouTube and also on LinkedIn, I've seen so many resources of people having compiled a bunch of like good information when it comes to system design. That's like literally about like here are the 4 of the most like popular architectures for systems. Here's their like strengths, here's their downfall, and stuff like that. Any other topics would be good to know. No, if I were to give you any more topics, then it would be very specific to the coding language, So let's say if you are interested in like a job and their tech stack is with JavaScript, one of the most fundamental things you should know is like, what are asynchronous calls? What are promises? Like how do we do all of this stuff, So anything further than this would be like language and job specific. So I'll end it there.
Awesome. Thank you. And as you can see now, we're like halfway through. The chat is getting fired up. I'm copying and pasting your questions over on a different doc to keep track. But also, if you see any, full disclosure, I don't write code. It's, this is new for me. So if you see some questions in the chat that maybe I'm not touching on or something like that, or if you want to fire some answers in the chat too, that is totally fine. Or you're welcome to poll questions if there's anything that jumps out. But I love how many are coming in. So this is awesome. Okay, yeah, they just keep coming now. This is great. Okay, so let's bounce to I love this question that someone asked. Someone asked in the live chat here, if we stumbled in the middle of the interview, how to move forward? What a great question. Love it.
Yes, we've all been there. And I assume that by stumbling, you're talking about like when you're just kind of like, I don't know where to go from here. Like what? Or like, is this even working? Do they like me? Am I doing a good job? Am I speaking concisely? I think those are like a moment where you're in a deadlock, I've definitely have been there a couple of times, and it's the worst feeling of all time. But I think it's one of those things where you're like, first, like you have to like de-stress. You have to like find space, like take a deep breath and, clearly communicate to the person and just be like, hey, right now I'm having a hard time coming up with like anything next steps. Can you give me any tips, or do you see anything standing out to you that I can fix? Because I'm just like not being able to like move forward. So it's really about like creating that space for yourself, both within your body where you're like de-stressed and peaceful, and also communicating to the other person that like, hey, I'm not ignoring this interview and I'm not zoning out. I'm just like having a hard time answering. Can you please help me? And they should be able to help you. If they don't help you and they do something that will like make you more stressed out, red flag for the company culture. Because like, why are you stressing people out in an interview and just not helping them push, like get forward a little bit, so that's how you get out of that.
I love that. Thank you. Okay, so let's see here. We had a question in the live chat that said, when we are relaunching after a career break, when should we start applying?
Yeah, so I've never had a career break. I joined Autodesk last year. Pretty excited to be at Autodesk. Really, I don't think I know exactly like how to answer that question, but I have heard it before that like, for example, for women, one of the primary reasons why you have to take a break is like maybe if you have like a child. So pregnancy is like motherhood is one. Another thing that could come to my mind is that maybe if you're moving to a new state or the new location, it'll take you some time to like find a new job. So that's another reason for a break. I think in general, the advice that I've heard is like, whenever you feel like you're ready, start applying, but don't have the expectation that everyone's gonna like snatch you off the job market, So you should like leverage your network, your professional connections in terms of like getting you referrals and getting you like all the tips and hints about like, oh, this team in my company is hiring for this. I think you'll be a great candidate. So leveraging your network and being able to like leverage at least like LinkedIn or even going to tech events to create those connections, I think that'll be the best way, instead of like just applying as someone who just like through an online platform.
Great advice. Thank you. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to bounce back and forth between our pre-submitted questions and our live questions here. So one of our questions that we got pre-submitted was, soft skills in tech are huge. How can we best present or showcase them during the interview process?
Yes, great question. So soft skills is basically all the communications that I've been saying, like being able to communicate well and also assess whether the communication you're receiving from the company is like respectful to your time and something that matches with your communication style. I think during interviews, the way you answer questions, that could speak volumes about like your communication style and your ability. Another soft skill is also being able to like work well with other people. So they will ask you questions that are specifically for like, hey, tell me about a time where you had to fix this or you had to like move through this with your team. So they will intentionally ask you questions to measure your soft skills. Like that, it's you don't have to do a lot of like hidden work, like it's just how you speak, how you elaborate on your thoughts. And then also, your online presence, like your LinkedIn profile, that's also another way that you're presenting yourself. That's how you like establish your presence. And that's also goes into like soft skills of like how well can you connect with other people and represent yourself. um, that's what comes to my mind for that question.
Those are great. I love that. Yeah, it is interesting to think about how I love that you mentioned the LinkedIn presence too, because it's just takes a little bit of extra time, but it is really valuable because we talk about here how, we're linking up all the time, and it's also ways for people to check you out and to see what's going on with your career and potentially your network, right? To see those soft skills. So it really does go both ways.
Yeah.
Love that. Okay, let's see. So we have about just a little over 15 minutes left. So please do keep those questions coming, friends. Another question we had was, besides culture and benefits, what other company related information should we obtain from the interview process?
Yes, you should have a clear idea of like what kind of job you're going to be doing.
Mm,
um in job descriptions, people can be very like vague in terms of like what department or what organization or like what team it is that you will be joining. Like at Autodesk, I work within the finance organization and I am a software engineer, but there are software engineers within our other departments or like other organizations at Autodesk. So when you see a job posting for a data scientist, AI engineer, or software engineer, you should have an idea of like where in the company is this going to be, also what is the product or like the project that I will be working on. It's like something that I see a lot actually, where people just like join a team and I'm like, so what will you be working on? And they're like, I don't know, but here's the name of my like team members. And I'm like, okay, but like how do you know if you're like interested in that job? How do you know if people like enjoy like working on the deadlines of this thing? So
mm.
yeah, so like ask questions like, hey, the team that I'm joining, what where in the company are there, what are the products that I'll be working on, and the really push people to tell you what it is you're doing outside of just like the responsibilities and roles. Because you could be a software engineer or I don't know, a data scientist who has to uh, create models with great accuracy, but like what is the model, what is the data, like what is the work.
These are great, great questions to ask. I love that. Putting yourself in your future shoes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Love that. There was a question earlier that I liked to that I want to highlight, which was, we're going back to the interview process. Someone asked about thank you letters and if we should send them, when we should send them. Do you have thoughts on that?
I love that this got brought up. As a student, I got like different advice that like don't waste people's time with unnecessary communication versus send it. This might be the thing that makes people like pushes people over the edge between you and like one other candidate. So what I think is you should send thank you letters because you are it's like imagine all of this being like an in-person interaction, right? Like you just spend some time interviewing with a company, spending like half an hour or 1 hour with a person. They got to know you, you got to know them, right? It's just like a good polite thing to do, to send a quick email to the recruiter, or if you have access to the email of the person you spoke with, send them a thank you letter. And like don't send a thank you letter if you didn't actually enjoy your time, because people will receive that email and be like, oh, I guess that he really enjoyed his time, so we're gonna be like, okay, that's the genuine interest. Because very counterintuitive, but a lot of people interview just to interview, and it's very clear during interview process where like, oh my god, like you do not care about Autodesk, you do not care about this job, like you're just not that interested, you're probably just here to like get an offer. So like be mindful of the fact that it does come off like by sending a thank you letter, you're just like making a statement of like, this is how I genuinely care about this company and would love to be part of it. So my advice is like send it, but only if you actually enjoyed your time and you really want to work with them, and not just like as like a manipulative way to like push people over for getting the job offer that you might not even like want to use, you know.
I love that. Yeah, just being true and authentically honest, and not blowing, smoke. I love that. I
Oh
love.
yes, very yes. Be authentic. I love that word. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, totally. So we had we have great questions coming in. We had a couple questions about some technical things. If you had any professional certifications you can recommend, and there was a follow-up question about any materials for theoretical questions that for data science interviews and not coding for technical theory. These are some pretty technical questions. I'll let you kind of
I see.
handpick there.
Oh, okay. So for data science, this is true that actually there may not be like, if someone goes through like a 4-year bachelor's education for data science, let's say at a college called like UC Berkeley, that's University of Berkeley. Like if you go through there, it's actually shocking that even to those people, there isn't a lot of like supporting content or material in terms of like books and certifications that'll help you do well in interviews, because it's really like the industry is like asking questions that you may have never like seen in your classes. So if you don't have like a degree that and you're looking for like certifications and stuff, like not much is out there, and I think that there's actually some piece to knowing that. And when it comes to like preparing for the theoretical questions of data science, I think the best thing is to like be able to read a lot of books, like the I'm forgetting the names, but there's some good authors that have like books that really like go into detail, like the statistics details of like, here is like where this model came from, and here's like all the formulas associated with it. It depends on you and the job that you're applying to if you want to know that much detail. But like when it comes to theory, that's basically like the textbooks of data science is what has that information. And outside of that, I think the internet, like in the online, there's so many good content, like similar to how I have a YouTube channel that I'm like speaking about the information I learned. There are other people who are like original content creators, and that's not like a certification per se, but that's like a person who has learned something through like experiencing it firsthand, and then now they're creating content, whether it's like articles or like LinkedIn posts or like YouTube channels or even on like Instagram. Oh, and another platform that's very popular for this is Twitter. So those are great ways of like getting information that has to do like a little bit above and beyond like just like your regular questions of, hey, how would you solve this given this is your data.
Love that. Thank you. So we have just about 5 or 6 minutes left for live questions. And if you do have any questions, we're not doing coming off mute for this one. So feel free to drop them in the chat and we will pass on the question that way. And we still have some more pre-submitted ones, and we also have some great ones coming in live. So there was a question too, when we were talking about earlier, when you're asked, I love when you were suggesting to ask a lot of questions during the interview process. We had a question that asked, how can you determine during the interview process if the role you're applying for will serve your professional growth objectives or not? So what are some things that can stand out, or like, oh, they want to help me grow, or maybe some orange or red flags that might be to stay clear of?
Yeah, so if we're asking this question, then we should be 100% clear of what our career growth goals are, And if we're talking about like a very entry level job, someone who just like just pivoting into the career or have just into the industry, or someone who has just graduated and wants to get that first job, you might not have the most clear idea of like, what is it that I want to do? Like earlier this year, Autodesk, my team, like they allowed me the opportunity to do a product management training. And that has nothing to do with software engineering, but it's like there's the flexibility and there's the training budget to go and learn as much as you want. So if you don't know what you want to do and specifically what you want to do once you are at this company, then just ask them the simple question of like, do you have any, like, what are your perks for continuous learning? Would you be able to like tell me if there's a budget or like a quarterly or an annual budget dedicated to taking courses and trainings? If not, like what kind of like, if they don't have a that sort of like budget, you can also ask them, do you have any like relationships with or any like kind of like direct access to any kind of training? Like there might be an internal company website that they load courses onto it for people to take. Or you can ask them like, if I join your company, would I have access to LinkedIn Learning? That's another tool that has a lot of like good information for you to upskill and to explore different jobs and different sort of like skills. So that should be like the first and easiest question that you ask. And you know, in case they say that we don't have that, you know, then you kind of like have to be like, well, do I like that? Do I not like that? I personally would not like that because I like venturing out into the different areas. And Autodesk definitely is very intentional with putting aside budget and also pushing everyone to use that budget. Like we've got so many communications from everyone in Autodesk that says like, use your budget. We don't want it to expire. Go take this course and come back to us with all the stuff that you learned.
Love that. Love that. And as you can see in the chat here, Erica behind the scenes at Power to Fly is dropping in some useful links. Please feel free to click that, and that will take you over to the Autodesk landing page for Power to Fly, where you can follow them on our website, and you can see all of the jobs that are listed there, as well as other great resources. So I highly recommend you do that. We had another sort of technical question, so you can help me out here. The person asked, is programming in R preferable in data science interviews, or is Python preferable in technical interviews? I'll be perfectly honest, I don't know what any of that means.
Oh, so R and Python, they're different like programming languages, and you know, okay, so that's a really good question because that's something that comes up. You know, people who go through the data science, like a bachelor's degree, or do a statistics bachelor degree, at least in North America, schools really push to teach that material to you in the programming language R. And what's more popular right now is Python because it's so versatile. You can like create a mobile app. You can create like a website with Python. You can do AI machine learning stuff in Python, and you can write code for a robot in Python. So that's very versatile. And for someone who has had their start and beginning in coding in R, because it is a very statistical, like very mathematical language, they often get turned off by job posting who say like, we want you to know Python, you know? And honestly, which one is more popular depends on the company you're applying for, because there are definitely companies out there who are hiring for people who are very familiar with R and don't really care about Python. But my bet, me coming from a computer science background and being a software engineer, I believe Python is more versatile and it's not that hard to learn. You know, it's a very high level language. And in terms of like the statistical packages and libraries that R has, it's very compatible. So look at the job description and the company's tech stack. If it's a company that wants people to know R, that's what you can interview with. And if they're a company that wants Python, you know, you should have clarity from either the recruiter or from the job posting that says like, are you able to still interview with R with the promise that you will learn Python on the job? And in my opinion, if you're looking at a job posting that says Python, you know, there's like on YouTube, there's like 3 to 4 hours of like just a long 3-hour video of like, here's the fundamentals and everything you need to know about Python. Just sit down, go through that. It's like very well worth your time, and you can be assured that like it doesn't matter which one it is or what the job posting says, you'll be able to code in both, if that makes sense. Yes.
Sorry about that.
No
Working
worries.
from home. just popped off for a second. I got a cute little puppy over there. Okay,
Oh,
so we
cute.
just, yeah, it's part of my like self-care over the past few months. He's tiny and 6 pounds and full of energy. Love him.
Oh,
Yeah, keeps me young. And very busy. Okay, so we have just 5 minutes left. This has been so great. Thank you so much, everyone, for being a part of this conversation. If there's any last minute burning questions, feel free to drop them in the chat here. And please do follow Autodesk on the Power to Fly website, as well as you can see, yes, all these great resources and YouTube links and LinkedIn pages from our amazing speaker today. So please do drop that in there, or please do click on those so you can stay connected and watch for those posts that we're going to see of those great resources. There's just so much to do here. So, and yes, there's a question in the chat here. Will you be able to get a copy of this recording? Will this be recorded? The answer is yes. You'll get a follow-up link in the next couple of days so you can rewatch this conversation, because we have covered a lot and there's so much in it. So feel free to check that link out, and then you'll be able to rewatch it. You can share it with your friends. So we asked a few questions beforehand, and you submitted your answer to us when we asked you how would you describe the culture at Autodesk in one word. You said innovative. Yes,
Mhm.
I will let you elaborate on that. The pre-submitted was one word. How is it innovative over at Autodesk?
Yes, we actually have a couple of we have several great verbs, like smart and like innovative. These are verbs that are kind of like within the Autodesk values and mission. So I think innovative in a way that like Autodesk is really welcoming to new ideas. And I've seen this across the company, like they want people to come in with fresh eyes, look at the way things are done. And if you have any value to add, or if you have like a better way of doing it, there's definitely room for conversation. So I think like innovation is welcomed, and it's one of the better parts of my job, since I have freedom to do what I want with the support of the company.
Amazing. Thank you. And I love too. So you're just going to give us this one live. What's your favorite part
Yes.
about working at Autodesk?
Yeah, I love working on Autodesk. I'll give you like another answer, which is like I think the work-life balance. I've seen it in other companies where like people struggle, and that might be because of the company or the team that they're specifically part of. But when it comes to Autodesk, they really want you to be an individual and to grow and to like I mentioned, have a work-life balance. Like they literally are saying like, hey, everyone in the company, Friday, second half of the day, no meetings, you are not allowed. And it's like they are the ones that keep you from being that workaholic person. And also, like when it comes to training budget, the amount of communications we've got company wide that says like, use this, we want you to learn, take some time off, block your calendars, that's also like very valuable to me.
Awesome. And what are your top tips for someone who is interviewing? You said interviewing well is a skill. We talked a lot about that today. Invest time to improve the skill to prepare best for interviews. Yeah.
Yes, it's not something that comes easy to everyone. It's a very like interviews are a very specific kind of conversation where you're like being evaluated. So it's a skill to be comfortable in that space and to be able to answer questions. And even if you get into a deadlock, it's a skill to be able to move past it and like still carry on the conversation. So, use online learning, use all the free content online to just put some time into like, how do I do this well? How do I communicate well? How do I represent myself well?
Awesome. Well, with that, we are out of time, my friends. Please give our speaker a digital round of applause. Thank you so much for making the time today. And thank all of you for being part of this chat today. Feel free to make sure you connect on LinkedIn. We're going to be getting some great follow-up posts, and you'll get this link. So thank you all so much.